Hi there. Today we're going to talk about inner authority and making decisions well beyond the scope of inner authority. So this video is going to be particularly helpful for you if you are any human design configuration other than a reflector. I'm not going to go into reflectors today because you're a whole different kettle of fish, but for everyone else who has any color on their chart, it's going to be most helpful if you are not a total newbie and you do actually understand some of the jargon, because I have other videos. I'll put a playlist up here for more introductory explanations of some of the different inner authorities. But if you already know your inner authority, but you're like, there's something else going on here, I need to understand decision making beyond the scope of just inner authority, then we're going to dive into that in this video. So if you know terms like exactly what your inner authority is called, in terms like defined, undefined, open, the names of all 9 centers, and you can keep up with that kind of jargon, then let's dive into this. And if we haven't met before, I'm Carolyn Southwell. I've been playing with human design for 11 and a half years at this point, and it has become very obvious to me that some of we need with newbies to start with the basics, but pretty quickly, depending on your design, we actually need to dig into a bit more of the details and look at a bit more of what's happening in the whole of your chart, not just say you are this type and you have this strategy and you have this inner authority. So this video came about because I was working with a client last week who had quite a lot going on in her chart. And as a newbie, it was really beneficial for me to run through her type, her strategy, her inner authority. But I very quickly realized, hang on, there's so much more that with everything that I know, look at in terms of how to apply human design to real life. And I found myself teaching her beyond the scope of inner authority to look at how were her defined and undefined centers influencing her decision, her process of making decisions, how to make clear, aligned, correct decisions beyond just the couple of words written next to her inner authority. And I realized as I was teaching that to her, hang on, I haven't got a video about this on the channel. So hence, here we are today. So if you are somebody who you understand your inner authority, but when you go to live it in the real world, you realize that something's missing, it's not quite right. You wonder if there's something wrong with inner authority or human design, or worse, you think that there's something wrong with you, that you're broken or you're not doing it right, then we're going to talk about the influence of your centers. And when we say we, I mean me. I'm going to talk you through the influence of your centers. So first we need a definition of inner authority, so we're all on the same page. Ra created inner authority as a way to simplify this idea of how we make decisions. And he did it based on a hierarchy of the influence of defined centers, hence why this video is not for reflectors. So if we start at the solar plexus, if you have that defined, you are automatically an emotional inner authority. So from there, if you do not have a defined solar plexus, but you do have a defined sacral, that makes you sacral inner authority. Now, keep moving. If they're both undefined, but you have your spleen defined, that will make you splenic inner authority. So on up to the ego center and the identity center, also known as the self center. And if all of that is undefined and you just have the ajna defined either in a connection to the head or the throat or both, then you have mental authority. Now, this was Ra's very simplified way of explaining how you are designed to make decisions. But it's one really important part. There's a whole lot of other things that are happening in your design. And hi there in the chat. Thanks for being here. So understanding your most influential defined center that makes your inner authority is super, super important. Just like it's super important to have a heart and a brain. we wouldn't exist without them. Yes. So, but what I need to do is I need to talk to you about the influence of your defined and your undefined centers. So first we'll look at the defined centers. Now, there are so many different configurations. I want to give you just 3 different examples so that you can have a look at how this might play out. But if I think of a client who is a sacral manifesting generator, so she has her sacral defined, she has her throat defined, and there's a few other things happening in her chart. But what I found as I was serving her, that we needed to look at the fact that she also had a defined spleen. So while her sacral is her inner authority, her defined spleen had things to say. And for her to make really clear, aligned decisions, she needed to take that into account. Another example, a client I can think of who is a splenic projector, who has her spleen defined, connected to her defined ego, also known as will center or heart center. So while she is a splenic projector, she also needs to take into account what her ego center has to say. Now, her ego shouldn't rule the roost because the spleen has is higher in the hierarchy in terms of influence, but the ego still has something to say, and it's essential that she takes that into account when making decisions. One more example, an emotional manifester that I can think of, who I guide from time to time, who is an emotional authority, but then he also has his spleen defined, and he also has his ego defined, and he also has his self or identity center defined, and he also has his ajna defined, right? Can you see how there's a lot going on in a chart like that, right? The more defined centers you have that have things to say, the more that it is useful for you to understand what all of those centers might have to say and might bring into the picture for you when it comes to you making really clear, empowered decisions. Because ultimately, that's what we want. We don't really care about human design, really. It's just a tool for us to understand how to do life better. So, and now I'm going to go on and talk about the influence of some of the undefined centers. But if you are finding this video helpful, 2 easy options as a way to say thank you and let me know that you're finding it helpful is, 1, you can hit the like button and that'll just tell YouTube to share it with more people. And if you can think of someone that would really benefit from this content, then feel free to share this video with them directly. Okay, let's talk about undefined centers. Now, while your undefined centers are not supposed to influence your decision, they will often get in the way of you making clear decisions. So it's important to know that the influence that they have, just like you might want to meditate in the morning, but if you have a 2-year-old that's yelling at you from the other room, you need to be aware of how you're going to deal with that influence, right? So 2 very clear, obvious examples. About half the population does not have their solar plexus defined. So if you are any of the other inner authorities, sacral, splenic, ego, self-projected, or mental, or our precious reflectors, who have everything undefined or open, then you, by design, have your solar plexus open or undefined. And you already know that means you can feel everyone else's emotional energy. And while the rest of us emotional beings are on our waves or having big emotional reactions, you're feeling it. If you're connected with us in any way, right? You're feeling it. So it's very difficult for you. Let's say we're talking about that sacral manifesting generator who wants to make gut decisions, but then the person who is is asking her a question, that person wants her to say yes, but her sacral wants to say no. It can be so difficult for her to upset the other person because the undefined solar plexus is feeling it all. So there's such a tendency towards people pleasing and wanting to avoid upsetting people, wanting to avoid any sort of confrontation when your solar plexus is undefined. I'll give you another example. Most of you, 80-something%, 85, 87% of you will have an undefined head center. So that triangle right at the very, very top. And this is where we get all our inspiration. So for most of you, when you are experiencing, receiving inspiration from other people and you're hearing their inspired ideas, people like me I have my head center defined, I can infuse all this inspiring energy into other people. And it's so easy if you're plugged in. Let's say you are that splenic projector who has the spleen to ego definition. And that's the only thing that's defined in her design. Now, there's a lot of influences with 7 open or undefined centers, but let's just talk about the influence of this undefined head center, because it'll apply to all the rest of you, even if you have 8 centers and this is the only one that is white on your chart. It would be easy for her, if she was inspired by something that I said, to want to go and take action based on that inspiration. But that would not be correct for her. What is correct is for her to see what her spleen says in the moment, and to make sure that she's also listening to what she wants, what she has the will to do, because that's what the ego center is going to be leading her towards. The main point that I wanted you to take away from this is that decision making in human design is multi-layered. It goes well beyond the scope of just following your inner authority. Your inner authority is really important, but it is going to be incredibly helpful for you to learn and understand some more about each of the centers, both the defined, because they're speaking to you in a way that's helpful, and the undefined, because they're going to be noisy and get in the way, and you need to not have them distract you or like override your process. If you want to learn more about each of the centers, I did a course a few years ago learning about your energy centers. Now, I've put a link in the video description to the page on my website, carolinesouthwell.com/courses, and just scroll down until you see the one that says learn about your energy centers. It's a very low cost, easy way to just do a self-paced course and learn about each of those 9 centers in their defined, undefined, and open configurations. Great if you are like, I don't really get all the centers. Now, if you would like me to walk through your specific individual chart so that you can make really clear, empowered decisions and understand how to do it properly so you can go and live your life, there's also a link for coaching. carolinesouthwell.com/coaching is the way to see the options there. Live Your Design is probably the best option, but have a read through the descriptions and see which ones match you. And if you are like, yeah, Carolyn, I'm pretty new to this and I want to like watch some more videos, then I'll make sure on screen I put some of the most relevant ones for you to have a look through. And again, most of them were going to be linked in the Inner Authority playlist, where I've put together all of the different videos that I've done on each of those, so then you can layer that in and do some self-study. And I hope that this video was really helpful.